I was not raised in a Christian home at all. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was a drug addict. It was really tough for me growing up. My dad was abusive to both my mom and my stepmom. And they used to just send me to church as a babysitter to so they could go out drinking and doing what they wanted to do and party. And I hated every minute of it. And looking back all those years, here we are years later, and I look back and I realize how big of a picture that God really wants us to see. Because I used to watch my dad drag my mom and my stepmom around the house by their hair and beat her up. And he looked at me, I was 13 years old, and he said, "One day you're going to be just like me." And I told him, I said, "I'll never be like you." Because I had one man in my life, his name was Pete, and he was at the church, and he cared enough about me to let me know when I was doing wrong. And I remember one night, he picked me up on the church bus, and I'd go to church, and I would cuss at church and everything else, and one day he come up to me, he said, "All right, that's enough." He said, "That's done, you're not doing it anymore." And I cussed him out, and he slapped me right across the face. And what I realized is that's what I needed, is that slap across the face to show that he wake me up, that he loved me enough to care about me, to come and confront me, to tell me I was doing wrong. So years later, I did start kind of following my dad's footsteps. I went out drinking and partying as a kid. Again, my parents weren't really there to influence me. But I always just knew there was something that I was missing in that. And, after Carson was born, I started going to church. And for about 13 years, I played church. I sat in the church pew. I'd get up and I'd sing with everybody, and I'd worship God. But I was only there to warm that church pew. And then it was back in 2020. I had already went through a low spot in my life in 2017. I moved to Florida. I had a failed move to Florida, I should say. We come back up here. I didn't have a job. It's Christmas time. And it was just really a struggle. And I almost lost my family then, because there was somebody that come in trying to say, "Hey, I would never do that to you," to my wife. And I almost lost my family at that point, but out of that came a blessing, and that, Lakin came from that situation. And then 2020, I just was really having a hard time. I had lost my dad like a couple years prior, and even though my dad wasn't a positive influence in my life, he was still my dad. Like, I wasn't here like without him. So I was really struggling. I had a low spot in my life, and I remember it was August 1st. We were going through COVID and all that stuff in 2020. Pastor Carlton at Tabernacle I don't remember what he was preaching about, but I just remember I was looking up at the cross, and I realized that everything that I've ever done up until that point, Jesus went to that cross for me. And at that moment, I realized, man, you've just been playing this position. Like, you haven't really been living for God. And that day I went up and I got saved. I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. Got baptized a few weeks later. And I wish I could say that that's where I really, really turned at. I did change my life around right there. Because I used to I used to cuss a lot. And I always prayed to God, help me get rid of that, please. Like, that was not something. But I worked in a construction industry, and it's just like, but God did. He answered my prayer, and, He helped me to stop cussing. And probably about a year later, that was when Casey was diagnosed with her cancer. And as a man, I just wanted to fix it, right? That was just, as a man, you just want to fix everything and like, hey, how can I fix this? And it took me to about 6 months into that for God to just keep showing me, stop, listen to me, just take one day at a time, because there's going to be problems tomorrow. You're going to have a roller coaster. You're going to be up and down, up and down. And even up until, this point, it's still been a struggle. My marriage, my whole family situation. And July 24th of this year, I lost my younger brother. And he was my best friend. And I was mad at God over that. Because he took something away from me that I searched for years to find. Because for 25 years we didn't get to see each other because who my dad was. And I'm like, why, God? Why are you doing all this stuff? Why am I going through all this? And then one day my mom, one day my mom called me and she said, Jeffrey, I just want to know, my stepmom, she said, I just want to let you know that I went out and bought me a Bible. I've been praying to Jesus. I don't know why this has happened, but I feel like this has turned me towards him. So in that moment, I realized God is using this. It's not about me. It's about those around me and the influence that Jesus is for me to influence those around me. And so he's still working on me every day, and I still got a long way to go. But I pray to God I just thank God that he didn't give up on me when I wanted him to when I was a kid. Because who knows where I would be without God. So that's my story.